right, so we are just about to go live. We should be there any minute now. Okay, and we are there. Okay, so you and I, okay, folks, we are here. My name is Rodney Hakim, and I welcome you to the live streaming on Facebook, the discussion of Outdoor Shakespeare in New York. Again, for any of you who have not seen our programs before, who are new to the New York Shakespeare universe, my name is Rodney Hakim. I am the voice behind the New York Shakespeare social media feeds. And our aim is to bring you as much information as we can about what is happening in New York as it pertains to Shakespeare, whether that is live performances, whether that is readings, stagings, film screenings, casting calls, whatever the case might be. We are trying to gather as much of that information as possible and present it to you here on social media, whether it's on our Instagram page, instagram.com/New York Shakespeare, whether it is on Twitter, twitter.com/NY Shakespeare, or right here on Facebook, on our Facebook group where this is being live broadcast. That's facebook.com/groups/NY Shakespeare, or on our Shakespeare page. We are also on LinkedIn, we are on WordPress, we are all over the place. So anywhere where there is social media, we try to put as much New York Shakespeare content out there for you as possible. And we have a fantastic, fantastic program here for you tonight. We have Outdoor Shakespeare in New York with some of the finest makers of Outdoor Shakespeare in the game right now. I'll take a moment to introduce everyone. Let me just make sure that we are connected. Let me refresh my page over here on Facebook Live and make sure that people are seeing the live broadcast. Okay, that should be live. Okay, I have on one screen, I have our discussion. We're having the actual discussion via Zoom, but is being live broadcast to Facebook groups, to Facebook Live. So if you are having trouble connecting to us, if you're not hearing us, or for some reason you are not seeing this discussion on your screen, please text me or email us at info@nyshakespeare.com, message us via the Facebook group. And if not, if for some reason the connection doesn't go through, the entire program will be rebroadcast on our Facebook page and all over our social media after the conclusion of this discussion. So let me introduce to you the wonderful participants that we have here tonight. We have 5 of the 7 scheduled participants here with us so far. Let us start with our good friend Christopher Carter Sanderson of the pioneering group Gorilla Rep. Hello, Christopher.
That means old. Pioneering means old. Just so everyone's clear. I love you, Rodney.
I love you too, my friend. We have our friend Nicholas Martin Smith of the Hudson Warehouse Theater Company. Hello, Nicholas.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having us here tonight.
Happy to have you. We have our friend Emily Gallagher of the Barefoot Shakespeare Company.
Hi, Rodney. So excited to be back.
Good to see you, Emily. We have Frank Williams of the Staten Island Shakespearean Theater Company. Hello, Frank.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be included with such great company. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Beth Ann Hopkins of the Smith Street Stage over in Brooklyn. Hello, Beth Ann.
Hi, Rodney. Happy to be here.
All right. So we have 2 of our scheduled participants. That is Stephen Burdman of New York Classical and Davis McCallum of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. They have not joined us yet. We are hoping that at some point in the discussion tonight from 8:30 to 10 p.m. that they do pop in and join us for at least some portion of the discussion. But if not, we will hopefully catch up with them another time. Let me check into our page over here. Okay, so we should be going. I'm sorry, folks. Trying to make sure that we are connected.
No need to apologize, Rodney. We've all had to become tech people over this last year.
Isn't that the case? Isn't that the case where all of us who are There we go.
I had
All of
an
us who
actor
are-
not show up for a rehearsal in Houston in 2009. I Skyped him onto my laptop, dropped it at his chair, and said, "Everybody deal."
You were way ahead of the game.
No, I'm fucking cheap, actually. And this stuff is a lot cheaper. I've done so many developmental readings. And I had a reading scheduled for the Friday when the lockdown happened on Wednesday, just because I'm cheap.
All right. So as was alluded to, the people who are in this discussion are all people who are theater makers. They have been for many years, have been presenting theater in and around New York with their theater companies. Some for 8 years. I think Emily, you're with Barefoot Shakespeare has been around for 8 years, and I think Nicholas, you guys have been around for 18 years. Christopher, I think you are a record holder tonight. I think you've been doing it for 25 plus. Is that correct?
That means you're a pioneer.
A pioneer, a pioneer.
I directed A
old.
Midsummer Night's Dream in Washington Square Park and made it move from place to place as it went from scene to scene without apology or pause for the first time in the summer of 1989.
I remember, as I've told Christopher in some of our previous discussions, for me as a young Shakespeare nerd, the productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream he and Gorilla Rep would do each summer down in Washington Square Park were, for me, one of the highlights of the summer season. I'd love to go down there and check that out. And they'd have magnificent actors every year doing the work, and the actors would change from year to year, but the quality would not. It was always just, super fantastic stuff. So let's just take a moment for each of you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your company, how long you've been around, what part of New York you do your productions in, and then we will get back to the current state of matters, which is how things have been shut down because of the coronavirus pandemic. So Christopher, let's start with you. Just give us well, you're a pioneer, so you want to pioneer how this discussion is going to start.
Could you start with the youngest company, please? Oh my God.
Thanks for volunteering me.
Okay, I'll go right ahead. Here, I'm into it. That's my cue to pick it back up. If you don't want the cue I'm handing, I'm doing it. Guerrilla Repertory Theater Company started in 1989 when I did Midsummer Night's Dream in Washington Square Park because I was so tired of tragedy. I did Hamlet for my thesis production at NYU. And so I was going to do a comedy, and I was looking at different theaters to rent. I lived on Carmine Street. I walked across the park to 721 Broadway. I walked over the skateboard hills. I looked around me, and the clouds parted, and the gods sang, and the trumpets were blaring from the angels. And somebody had built my set. And I said, I'll do that scene there, and then that scene there, and the audience will just run around and chase it, and it'll be great. And I didn't think about that again until opening night. And I was in the audience, and I thought, I wonder if they will run around. But luckily, those 50 intrepid New Yorkers jumped up and ran to the next scene. And from there, at one point, we did 5 shows in a summer. We had an average of 2. We haven't done as many for a while. I think the last time we did one was 2015 or 16. We did Midsummer Night's Dream, Washington Square Park. But in the interim, we did over 20 productions of Midsummer Night's Dream. We did Macbeth, was a big hit 3 times up in Fort Tryon Park. We produced stuff in Central Park, including an Othello that I was very proud of. I don't know, we've worked our way through this and that, and all kinds of intermittent adventures occurred. We were formally incorporated in 1992, which I think bears mentioning. I studied with Richard Schechner, who did environmental theater at NYU. But in 1993, our sister company for a while was Ann Hamburger's On Guard Arts. And I think it's really important to remember that Ann Hamburger created the term site-specific. So we were doing what we called guerrilla or environmental, and she was doing site-specific. And that was what our pioneering asses were doing out there in the park.
And you guys were at it for about 25 years.
We still are at it. I'll be back when the time and situation is right. At this point, I'm doing these films that are all close up, and you can pick up these films, put them on your iPhone like this. Some of you may recognize Bruce Barton, and it's turning out to be incredibly immersive because you feel like you're in the front row seat because the entire film is in 9:16 and in close up, which sounds like a great pivot story, doesn't it? It sounds like I thought that up because of the COVID. That's a lie. I thought of doing an all close up Macbeth literally in 2003. So I've had this stupid idea in mind in development for 17 years until the COVID hit. And I realized that all the actors that I wanted to work with, A, had a high quality camera in their pocket, and B, suddenly had nothing to do.
Perfect recipe for making a iPhone based version of Macbeth, which I have to say, there's a review of it on our WordPress site. It's a really, really fantastic version of Macbeth, and I highly recommend you check it out. And I will be forwarding the Vimeo link out shortly after the discussion.
Thank you. Well, you know, Rodney's also lassoed me into doing my first Zoom production. I've avoided Zoom productions. The lag with the picking up of the cues drives me a little nuts. So my hat's off to you guys who are brave enough to do that. But since he's doing that, we're talking with the community backers group around Washington Square Park, and thinking about maybe putting some screens up in Washington Square Park to kind of make it still have the feel. Maybe we'll simulcast it out there, or just have a bunch of people hold up their iPhones.
What Christopher is referring to is that one of the new ventures that is coming forward from New York Shakespeare in the coming weeks and thereafter is we don't have only just our Instagram live discussions. We don't have only our master classes. That'll be coming up next week with Stephen Burdman. We also have our all-star productions, and our all-star productions are going to be productions like Christopher's as a Midsummer Night's Dream, which has been a mainstay of the New York scene for 25 years. We'll be bringing that to you via the online format, and we will also be doing a lot of other fun things. So Christopher, we are so excited to have you here tonight. Nicholas is muted, but let's bring you back on, Nicholas. So Nicholas, you and Hudson Warehouse have been performing at the Riverside Park up in the Upper West Side for, I believe, about 18 years, right?
This is our 18th season. Yeah, we kicked it off in 2004 with The Tempest. It was a 2-weekend production. And after a couple of years, we were doing 2 shows, and then we were doing 3. And then Susan Leeds, the executive director, came in 2010. And at that point, we just kind of grew exponentially. We now do 5 shows. We moved indoors. In 2013, we got the Good Neighbor Award from Goddard Riverside. So we started partnering with them. And yeah, it was really wonderful. And so we have a year-round schedule, year-round season. We do a lot of different things. It's interesting, we're talking about the video, but I'll get to that. We do a lot of work with the community. We got partnerships with the DOC, Department of Corrections. We got partnerships with the Riverside Conservancy and with Goddard Riverside. So the community is really important to us, and also arts education is really important. But also things like the Veterans Day event, which we produce every year, where Susan will interview vets, and then we have our actors do their roles or their part. It's really fascinating. And just talking about productions, yeah, it's funny you hold up Bruce Barton. Bruce Barton's one of my favorite actors. He's marvelous. We have a great company of actors, and really solid, and some great talented people who, like Bruce is one of them, but we have several. And a couple of interesting productions we've done is that the fact is that blood is a character that we use in our plays a lot. And it started when I worked with Jared Kirby in 2009 on a Hamlet, and he introduced blood to me, and I've used it ever since. And it's really wonderful. And one production we did, and it was Jared and me. Jared was the co-director, and I was Titus. And the amount of blood we went through every night was astounding. And one of the things that about the patio at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument is that it's upstairs, so it's raked. So taking that hand off in Act 3 or end of Act 2, Titus takes his hand off. They chop his hand off, and to do that in that space with everyone looking down, it was really tricky. But we created this table, and the table had a fake hand. What were you going to say? No, it had a fake hand, and it was really amazing because it really looks like it came off. And the blood work was wonderful. And the fun about that show was we had people sitting on benches, and we gave out poncho to everybody because
that's a good way to encourage people to stay.
we call it the blood zone. You know, that was the so. And there's pictures of a video of people just at the last moment bringing their poncho up because they didn't realize the blood was coming at them. There was one time actually we did Henry 4.1 with Steve Gutenberg a couple of years back. And one blood story is that Liam Neeson came to see the show and sat in the front row in a chair, which we made for him. And we kind of watched as one drop of blood sailed and landed on his shoe. And we were like, oh dear. But yeah, we have a wonderful group of talented people, and it's wonderful working up there.
We're very happy to have you guys represented in the discussion. You guys do a lot of good work up there. So we have downtown, we have Upper West Side. Let's jump over to Emily, our friend Emily Gallagher of the Barefoot Shakespeare Company. Emily, you guys have been around. I think you are the least tenured of the people here tonight at 8 years, which is nothing to sneeze at. 8 years is quite a long time.
That was a lovely way of saying that, Rodney, least tenured. And actually it's our 9th season. We had our first show. We were incorporated in 2012, but we didn't have our first show until 2013. But we've been doing Outdoor Shakespeare at Summit Rock in Central Park. So Upper West Side, near the Delacorte. That's where we tell everyone the bathrooms are. Closest bathrooms are down the hill at the Delacorte. But we love running around outside and playing in the park all summer. We rehearse out there as well, which, you know, is just such a blast. And Christopher was mentioning the lag on Zoom when it comes to those picking up those cues. And one of the things I've told our actors when we've moved virtually is I want you to do it like it's The Rock. I don't even want to hear the last line of the actor leaving the stage. I want to hear the person coming in. I don't care. Take over the last line. Like, be that on top of it. And so I felt actually, Christopher, that this new medium is similar in so many ways to working against all of the challenges and elements of outdoors. But we are indeed a young company. We think of ourselves as that as well. We love bringing in new, young artists, people right out of school, fresh, kind of trying to finding their legs in New York. And what does that look like in terms of both actors and our creative team? And I like to see us as a stepping stone of this is going to get you kind of the feel of what it's going to be like, and then go to some of these other brilliant companies that have been around for a long time and continue that career. But we modernize our Shakespeare. We like it to be grounded. We truly believe that if the actors believe what they're saying, the audience will too, and that you don't need sets and lights and props and costumes. I mean, they're great. We love them too, but you don't need that. It's the words that are important, and having fun and being honest and truthful. So we're big on open and collaboration and letting our actors and our creators create the world we're going to put out there for everyone. So it's been super fun.
We're very happy. Everything I've seen of yours has been great. So I'm very happy to have you as part of this discussion, Emily. Let's jump over to our friend Frank Williams from the Staten Island Shakespearean Theater. And as is evidenced by their name, I think you are the only Shakespeare company that I'm aware of in Staten Island. Are you not, Frank?
Company on Staten Island, but the active with over 30 years. But actually, I'm really the least tenured here, though. I've only been artistic director for 6 seasons now. This is our 6th season. Like Christopher, I started with Midsummer Night's Dream as well. We did it in the Staten Island Greenbelt out in the beautiful Staten Island forests, which we have a lot of parks and places like that. So that was a great place to do it. Since then, we've done outside shows predominantly in Fort Wadsworth. Been a great setting to do epic shows like King Lear and Richard III. There's two different forts there. One is the Battery Weed, and that's where we do more of those. And there's another fort where we've done shows like Measure for Measure. And last year we did Two Gentlemen of Verona there as well, which is not quite as grand, but it's got sort of an interesting kind of look to it that you can kind of, it's a little bit more malleable. This season, like you guys have been saying, like Nicholas said too, we've been kind of growing little by little as we go. We started with, one show, then two shows. This season we have 5 slots. In May, we're doing 2 shows simultaneously. We're doing Timon of Athens, along with Sam Shepard's Curse of the Starving Class. And we have a new location too, which I'm really excited about, because we're kind of right in the middle of a Staten Island neighborhood, which is called Stapleton. And we're in the spot's called Maker Park. So it's pretty much like a open green space lot. And it's been, logistically, it's been, there's been a lot of placemaking involved, kind of setting everything up from scratch. We have a tent going up this Saturday, and our stages are being built right now. So it's really exciting. And we've really been able to expand our season this year too. On Staten Island, we're pretty much the only theater company that had experience doing outdoor theater. So we're pretty much the only ones out here doing anything. So we decided, the middle, and let's get a show out a month. So right now I have 3 shows in rehearsal, another show auditioning next month, and we're just each month gonna have another one out. We're very excited because we've also opened because we were able to expand our season. We're doing some new and exciting things, like some new canon things, like a translation of Los Empeños de una Casa by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. And she was a 17th century writer, and we have a new modernized translation that's going to make this really special. And we've really been able to welcome in the Latinx community into that production. We have a social justice series coming out after that, where we're doing Waiting for Lefty, and we are proud to present a presentation. The first being by Clifford Odets, so then the second by Jackie Sybil's Drury. And then we're finishing off our season with Romeo and Juliet. And then finally, going up in September, will be Hamlet, which I'm directing for the first time. So I'm really, really excited to be tackling that.
Exciting, Frank. That's quite an ambitious season, and a big way to kick out of all the lockdowns and all things everything that's going on with the coronavirus. Let us have a moment to chat with our 6th participant, and that is Beth Ann Hopkins of Smith Street Stage. Hello, Beth Ann.
Hello.
So
yes,
tell us a little bit about Smith Street. I know you guys are in Brooklyn. I think you're in the Carroll Park section of Brooklyn, right?
We are. That's where our home base is. We started producing work there back in 2010. My now husband and I were working on a version of Romeo and Juliet at a company out in Jersey, Outdoor Shakespeare company. Mm-hmm. And we decided to take that show that we had workshopped there and start our own company with it, because we were very passionate about it. And that's kind of where it started. We started with that play, and then before we knew it, we were starting a company and thinking about next year and next summer. We started partnering with the Friends of Carroll Park. After they had seen Romeo and Juliet, they said, how can we help? And we said, well, there's a beautiful park house there, and maybe we can use that. So we've been building our shows in Carroll Park since then. And of course, growing the company, we also have company classes and workshops in development to create more work. But primarily, most people know us for our work in Shakespeare in Carroll Park, because it gets a pretty good following. And we're excited to get back there. And we've been trying, of course, as a lot of people have. Right now, we just have some beautifully designed posters that that adorn the space that are saying, "We're coming back. We're trying to come back." We desperately want to work. In the meantime, what we've been focusing on at Smith Street is more of our internal work. We were really moved by the Black Lives Matter protests that happened over the summer and last June. So we created an anti-racism committee, and we've been really maybe not overdoing, but just really specifying our internal work, our policies, and how people come into our company. And that's just something that we've always valued, but we felt really strongly that it needed to be written, that it needed to be expressed and shared, and then honored. So that's something we've been really focused on this past year, and now implementing it into hopefully our next production, which we are still in the works of trying to figure out. We had a production of Winter's Tale on the books. We had just announced it before the virus kind of took everything out. So we were about to start diving in, and then it was cut short. So now we are in a position of making sure that that's the play that we want to dedicate our time to. We want to employ both equity and non-equity performers, as we have in the past, and we're finding that a little bit difficult. But hopefully we'll be able to figure something out. We have a couple things in the works about possibly some behind the scenes work, kind of documentary style, possibly filmed. We do need a public component, but we want to make sure that that public component is safe, and that everybody involved is on feeling like it's something that they can come to with the relaxation of being able to do their best work. But we feel very strongly about, when working, trying to get in the same space at the same time, if at all possible. If there's any way to get it done, we're going to try to figure that out.
So well, each of you in your own way has kind of begged the question about the elephant in the room, which is the coronavirus pandemic. As we all know, just about, well, it's mid-April, so a little bit more than a year ago, in March of 2020, the coronavirus pandemic pretty much shut down all of public life in New York and pretty much anywhere else. But we're mainly focused on what's happening in New York. And many of you, I'm sure, had your whole summer season planned, and that all got put on hold. Everything just, got waylaid, and for the most part, the theatrical world, not just the theatrical world, pretty much any kind of live interaction moved into this mediated Zoom format. So as we all know, there has been a lot of expansion of what the Zoom format was intended to be. It was designed to be just a means for people to have business meetings, but has expanded so much in the past year and some change. We have our friend Stephen Burdman of New York Classical jumping in. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hey guys. Hey everybody.
We just finished up our introductions, so let me before we get into the heart of the discussion, let me welcome Stephen. Stephen has been you're the founder and the producing artistic director of New York Classical for, I think, 22 years now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you guys mainly are in Central Park, although you do some of the other parks around town as well.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So Stephen and his company have been one of the mainstays in New York City for many, many years, and I've seen their productions. They do fantastic work, and they have a very unique style that I think, Stephen, you refer to as the Panoramic Theater.
Correct.
And can you give us a brief summary about your company, what the Panoramic Theater style is all about?
We basically adapt the show to take place in each venue that we're in. We do 4 to 5 different public venues every year, including, and we do also indoor venues as well. So the show is adapted, and we don't use any sound reinforcement. So the blocking is we have a whole system of blocking we've developed over the years as well. And there's no scenery and there's no stage. So each scene is oftentimes, except in time of COVID, each scene is a different location in our very, very large venues. Our Central Park venue is 12 acres, Battery Park's 25 acres. So we use a large chunk of the venue and then we move around.
And you basically run from place to place and from scene to scene, and the audience travels after you.
Correct.
And I think in previous discussions, you mentioned that your actors had to be given pretty rigorous training to meet the demands of running from scene to scene and place to place, to the point where they have to pretty much be actor athletes to withstand the rigors of this method of performance.
Yes, including the heat and the rain. Actor athletes was actually quoted by my casting director. That's what she calls them. And also wonderfully vocal. Their vocal instrument has to be like in tip top shape.
So you really have to be a very superb actor to not only run around and not get winded in the middle of all this running back and forth from place to place. You have to really be a super actor with great vocal technique to be able to project as you're running from place to place and in such a large space. So this is we'll get to this in a moment. The acoustics of or the lack thereof of performing outdoors. But right before you jumped in, we were broaching the topic of the coronavirus pandemic and how it shut down theater, shut down live performance, it shut down the interaction, and everyone moved into the Zoom format. And there's been a great expansion of the way people present their work, whether it's Christopher and Gorilla Rep doing the iPhone shot film versions of the plays, whether it is some of the Zoom productions. Emily, you have been doing some Zoom productions. Stephen, you guys did a Zoom reading of King Lear last year. You guys have all been doing some form of this virtual presentation. But talk to me about that. Talk to me about how it is to be a company that is based on outdoor performance, that your whole identity is about being outdoors, being with the people, being out in the sun, and what it's like to take all of that energy and all that planning and transition it into this new space. What has that journey been like for you in the past year?
Well, for the past year, just to kick in, Susan is a documentarian. She worked at PBS. So what we did was Zoom Chris, I couldn't stand Zoom. Zoom, the lag time is so difficult. But what we did is just that what you were doing with the phones. We had we did the Veterans Day event where the actors did all their work on the cell phone, and they sent it in, and then we edited together with the storyline, the narration, the photographs, everything we would do on stage. But we did this in real time, which is really incredibly moving. And then Susan did for the Wham Festival up at Goddard, a documentary of what they said, which was a series of quotes. But again, going from a place of being a live theater to, in a split second, going to this other world of almost, it's very science fiction. For us, and what we do in that split second, it evaporated. And it was gone. And I think we were all in shell shock. A lot of people I know we're talking to were very, very lost. A lot of people were lost. A lot of companies have closed. A lot of our actors have left the city. They're not coming back. And it's sad. I'm glad that, this virtual room of artists are here, because it really is a brain drain. I mean, we've lost a lot of artists because
it's true. I think one of the papers, I don't remember which paper, one of the papers in New York had a stat that of forget just the actors, the general workforce, or to some extent the populace of New York, 10% of those who were coming to New York on a day-to-day basis are still coming in. So it's a real reduction of the number of people that are coming in and out of the city, not just coming in to work, or in the case of the theatrical companies, to rehearse and to perform, but even the people that would be the attendees of the shows, the audience for a lot of these shows. There's a huge reduction in people that are coming in as tourists, although it's starting to trickle back. So as you went from the standard of the outdoor performing model that you have all been doing for so many years into this sequestration, into this.
Rodney, I think that's a euphemism.
What's that?
Blunt. Outdoor.
Okay.
The truth is that what we provide is free Shakespeare.
Is it euphemism?
It's
Free
it's
Shakespeare,
it's an illusion. It's not what's important. What's important is what he said, which is we bring this to the people. We bring it to the people for free. That's what's important. So yeah, we're
absolutely.
outside. If you really think that's what's important, put up a fucking fence and charge $100 for people to get into your fucking production. It's not what's important. What's important is we do high quality productions for free for the people of New York and their guests.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what's important. And
Absolutely.
to be
But there's a
perfectly blunt,
significance, Christopher, of working outside. That's a completely different feeling than being inside the theater. Yes, we do it for free. Yes, we do it for the community. But there's a difference between
see,
doing it
I totally
outside.
disagree. I think the difference is that it's free, which means that a multimillionaire can be sitting next to a homeless person, and they're all New Yorkers. And as you know well, they all have opinions, right?
Yeah, true.
To me, it's the populist nature of it. It's the nature of the fact that somebody who is poor and can say, see, Guerrilla Rep doesn't do a lot of outreach because we don't have to. What happens is high school teachers in the area bring their kids and they come to us afterwards and say, thank God you're doing it. Thank God you're doing it uncut. Thank God you're doing it well. Thank God you're doing it in a way that engages our students, because they don't get anything like this. And they certainly couldn't afford to go down to the public and get it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that New York is going to come roaring back. And what I hope happens is that those of us who've really kept this principle, the idea of highest quality productions of Shakespeare to the people, I hope that we use it as an opportunity to band together, because frankly, the New York Shakespeare Festival, and we all know this, gets a line item in the New York City budget, right? Without even having to try every year. And they're not free. And the Delacorte is not free. Now, you're right, I misused the word euphemism, but by God, free is a euphemism for what they do at the Delacorte. You've got to pay hundreds of dollars to get a ticket, because it comes with membership, right? Or you've got to pay somebody to wait in line in a goddamn tent for you for 8 hours. That shit ain't free. We are free, and we should have a line item in the budget that goes to all of us. We should be a coalition that gets real Shakespeare in unexpected places to actual New Yorkers.
So talk to me about this. You are all veterans of the New York scene, and for the most part, I think with maybe one or two exceptions, you all offer free Shakespeare in the summer. What are the economics? What's the system by which you can offer free Shakespeare all summer long and not be walking away with your pockets empty by the end of the day?
It's called nonprofit, and it's meant to be exactly that, nonprofit. You know, the president of the Schubert Theater calls his theater the tax-paying theater, because he's trying to point out that it's unfair that he has to compete with the public in Lincoln Center who don't fucking pay taxes. It's completely insane. It's capitalistic nonsense, right? And that's what we're talking about, I think.
Well, you're a nonprofit, but you also have to reimburse your actors for their efforts. You guys are mostly equity companies. You have to reimburse your actors. You have budgets that you need to require for.
Yeah. There's an underlying mistake here that a not-for-profit company means poor or doesn't have money, right? All nonprofit means is when we bring money in the door, which we all do, passing the hat or however it is we do it. Right. National Endowment for the Arts, Department of Cultural Affairs, in our case, Laura Pell's Foundation, Tony Randall Foundation. That's how a not-for-profit works, is that rich people, give you a bunch of money, and you take that money and you spend it in an equitable way that doesn't give it out to other people as profit. There's still plenty of money passing through this model, and certainly, and this has been said many times, and these guys are champions of this. The guys on this program with me know one thing, which is, and it's been alluded to, theater in New York City is the greatest theater in the world, and it's an ecosystem. You got to have plankton in order to have fucking whales, man. You've got to have actors be able to get their shit working with, like it was said, no amplification. All you got is the words that was said. Look, once we forge actors to do this, they go on to Broadway. The first Titania I had was in Warhorse. The first Oberon I had has been in too many goddamn Broadway shows to name. And that's what New York should be. The theater, the people who are poor and just can go straight to the highest quality productions that we do should trust us to have just like it's been said, the taste to get the very, very best of the new actors, getting off the buses and coming to make their dream happen, as well as the older actors who are frankly not busy at the moment and want to go do something different, right? It should be that it goes from us to off-Broadway and then to Broadway, and that you can make a living and have children and make a living as an actor doing what we do, which is bringing high-quality theater to the people.
Just to speak to that, Christopher, I was just going to add that I've had some of my actors talk about it as like a real boot camp. Like, I got to go back to boot camp. I got to go back to Smith Street. I have to work out and I have to get back in shape. And that's the way to get it done. I'll also add that, we are a nonprofit. We have a lot of very generous volunteers, and not just with volunteers of money, but volunteers of time, who come back and give time and research and dedication. And, putting up any Shakespeare play in the amount of time that you're allotted to put a play up is never enough. These people have worked on these plays for years before they've started to get into the room. And then surrounding yourself, not just with the seasoned pros, but like you said, Christopher, the new blood, off the bus, coming in just ready and eager. And so it's the combination of all of those things that make it really breathe, and finding a community.
Emily said it first.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, and finding a community that embraces you. When we started producing in Carroll Park, we kind of said, I don't know if this is going to be our home, but we'll see if people keep coming back. And they just kept coming back and back and back. And so now, where are you? Why aren't you coming back?
See, part of what makes that boot camp happen is that when you're working, as we all do, outdoors in New York City, right? There's two things. One, you're surrounded by New York City, which is incredibly interesting. So if you're not incredibly interesting, right, people can just go out to all the interesting things. The other thing is that the exits are ubiquitous and well marked. So if they don't like you, they can just wander off. And that is the kind of really crucible that I think is a finishing that actors just don't get in America. The system in UK is very, very different.
It's always my favorite when we're rehearsing and a family just happens to walk by, and the little kid, the 6-year-old, stops and stares and doesn't want to leave. Yeah. That has happened more times than I can count to tell you that it's always the 3 to 8-year-old that is like, no, let's stay and watch this. And that to me just says everything about what we're doing and how we're captivating and bringing in those audiences, Rodney, bringing in those people who are going to donate and come back. I think in an Upper West Side family walking through the park with their kid, and their kid wants to stop and watch Shakespeare, the family's going to give us another look. They're going to give us another thought. They're going to go, maybe this is something we should look into. And I think that's one of the best ways outdoor work gets an audience and gets support is we're out there. Yeah. You will find us.
Creating a mailing list is a disaster because you don't know who anybody is or how they heard about you. So that's always crazy. And, we've tried, and it's slowly starting to percolate, like creating a subscriber base who have been very loyal even throughout the pandemic, which is keeping us alive and helping us save for when we can come back. And we're ready and be ready to go and be ready to put the resources towards that. But it's a really tricky thing because when you're not there, they don't know, they forget about you. So trying to continually get back out there and learn this online monster.
I want to push the idea of casting. We Christopher, you were talking about casting, how you have seasoned veterans, but you also have people that are just getting started. I think, Emily, you were on that page also. Stephen, for someone like yourself whose demands on the actors are so high, so rigorous, can you have people that are not veteran actors who are newbies that can handle the style that you ask of them?
It takes time, and I think it takes time to cultivate people. And we like everyone here knows, you start out playing the messenger roles and you move your way up to, I don't know, so whatever the smaller role. I mean, there's a ladder built into the work of Shakespeare, at least as far as size is concerned. And you could teach skill, and I always look at my time as 100%, right? So then when I'm looking at actors, I'm like, okay, this one's going to take this percentage. Okay, we're going to bring in somebody new. They're going to take a little bit more time from my voice coach, a little bit more time from my movement coach. And so, I always look at how to balance it out so we can develop people. And I happen to love that we have now have 28 artistic associates. And, you know, those are folks who've been working for us, some for 10, 12 years, maybe longer. And that's a joy. And it's also, but, you know, I'm always looking out for new people. This is actually this season is the first time I'm going to get to cast non-union actors in a long time, which is really exciting for us. You know, I've got 2 non-union roles in this next upcoming show, and I think that's really exciting. You know, I'm going to see who's out there. You know, but that could be my next Romeo and Juliet. You know, that who knows? I need a couple early 20s kids, right? You know.
Frank, you're actively casting right now. I think of all the groups that were represented here tonight, you're the only one that I can remember who was actually producing Shakespeare live during the pandemic shutdown. You guys did Two Gentlemen of Verona last summer, and you did it in a format where you had your actors masked and you had the audience social distance and masked, right?
Right. Yes. The audience was masked.
Bravo.
You know, it was free. It was outdoors, but we knew everyone who was coming, which was pretty much the only way we could do it. So basically, you had to sign up to get the free tickets, and then you know, if you were in a group of 4 or 5 or whatever, we can then put you in a group. You know, space the 6 feet, put in another group, or if it's 2, or if it's 1, or whatever. Luckily, Fort Wadsworth is a huge expanse of the space, so we're able to really, you know, we get a decent audience with them spread out. So it was about 75 to 80 people in the audience.
That's
our actors were masked.
Space, that's impressive.
Yeah, no, it was you know, we took up a lot of the room, but it worked. You know, I figured let's just go with, you know, the limitation that we have. You know, if the actors had to be masked, you know, let's incorporate it into the show somehow. So everybody was in a mask that had, you know, a mouth, kind of like a Venetian carnival mask, basically is what it was based on. And then, you know, using that as a theme, you know, we also incorporated like Commedia dell'arte masks in it, as well as you know, those kind of stock characters, and it really worked, you know. You know, for like Two Gentlemen of Verona, it was, you know, it really added a little extra pep into the concept, and it was a lot of fun. You know, we rehearsed mass the whole time, and crossed our fingers really hard, and you know, luckily no one came down with anything, and we were able to go without a hitch. I think we also timed it kind of well, where the dip happened, you know, in New York. We were basically rehearsing from I guess like the end of July, you know, with an opening in mid-September. So that worked as a pretty good beta test for us to be able to do our season this year. This year, the actors are not going to be masked though this year. But you know, to get around that, we're doing weekly testing, and you know, they leave their masks on while they're not on stage or in their scene. But you know, as long as they're tested, or you know, at this point, some are even, you know, there's a decent amount that are even vaccinated at this point. We
right,
can,
so you're
you know,
returning to
that's pretty much how we're proceeding at this point. Then they'll get tested again before.
You're returning to live performance, and the actors are not going to be masked.
Yes.
So now in New York, for those who are in the audience who may not be aware, we are still, although there is a return to some live performances, some live public gathering, it is with a lot of restrictions. Is that you can have a 33% capacity of what the typical audience would be, and I think just today the announcement came out from Governor Cuomo that is being upped from 33% to 50% as of April 26th, which is a week from today. So you can have a 50% capacity in your audience. So how do you work that out in a green space, in an outdoor space? How do you determine percent capacity in a space like that?
Just by, you know, being way below it. You know what I mean? I'm still, basically you put in, you try to get in close to 100 people in a large space that could fit 1,000. You know what I mean? That's
How about you, Nicholas?
the way we've gone about it.
What do you guys have planned? You guys have the season planned coming up. What are you anticipating in terms of how to seat people and how to have your actors masked or unmasked?
Right. Well, Susan and I have already mapped this out, and also the Parks Department's very. They have a line item application now before you even get your permit. That you have to have all these protocols in place and all the guidelines and everything, which we did. One thing we decided was that we're going to have auditions at the end of May, and everyone who auditions has to have their card that they've been vaccinated. And the deadline is May 18th. If we start rehearsals on the 1st, they have to be completely inoculated by that date. I feel like that's the only way to go forward, is to go with performers who are already vaccinated. We don't have any control over the audience. Reality is we're in a park. We can block it off. We've talked about fencing and limiting. I think what we're going to have to do is get reservations. I think, for the first time, how ironic, we have to actually get reservations for an outdoor event in the park. But that's what we'll have to do, because we have to keep it limited seating. And there's a grassy knoll there that we have people sit in. But we talked about using the spray chalk and I don't know if that's what you did, Frank, but creating circles or pods for people to sit in.
Yes.
On the grass.
Yeah.
And the other thing was
that works.
It does? Okay. I thought so.
Yeah.
We were actually the only event last summer to get a permit from the parks in Riverside Park to do Love's Labor's Lost last August. And that was part of the plan, was to use these the chalk to make circles and pods and things. But this summer, it's really about limiting it. It's about a bottleneck of setting up fences and signing people in and everything, reservations, which is something, it's a park.
Right. So what do you do when people?
It's a good way to get a mailing list.
True.
How do you deal with people that, like Christopher was saying, people will come in and they just, or Emily was saying,
Here's
a
the
family
thing.
comes by with it. Go ahead, Christopher.
One thing I want to say is that this is an extraordinary example of the absolute wealth that New York City has in the form of these companies doing free Shakespeare, because for the very reason that what we've just heard is people, using each other's experience, but also people doing really, really different answers and alternatives. There is no one right way. And every human being has a different appetite for risk as to when they're going to want to return to anything public, including the grocery store, for God's sake. So I think it's really fantastic that each of the companies that, as we talk, are talking about their individual response to that and how they feel they want to respond, to their audience. That's like, if that right there, that's the thing, that each of us has a very strong, different idea in communication with what we feel is going to best serve our audience. And another great thing is that sometimes we have people who filter between all of our audiences, and they get to try all of these different ways of coping with the risks and the unknowns that the coronavirus, has for us all. I am holding back from guerrilla rep right now because it seems like every time I try to do something, the Parks Department or Grand Central Station or somebody decides arbitrarily to try to stop me. I have to get sometimes a lawyer from the ACLU to mention the fact that a small green sign does not limit my audience's constitutional right to freedom of assembly or my actors' freedom of speech. Hello, working at the cloisters, for fuck's sake, and it gets to be an awful lot. So, to me, like, it should not be that everyone has my combative attitude about my communist values and my belief that you cannot take this away from the people. I think we should try out, because after all, for all of my hot-headedness about the fact that we all should own the parks, the fact is that if a bottleneck works to keep people safe, then we should all want the people to be safe too. And it's really best that we have these incredibly creative minds trying something that's very, in a lot of ways, essentially same and that has the same high standards, but that we're trying it out in a lot of different ways. To me, that's kind of quintessentially New York. You know, these incredibly talented and intelligent people like making completely different solutions to exactly the same thing. And isn't that exactly what's true of every Shakespeare production? Right? You could, all these people, all these companies could do a production of even the same play, and it would be really worth seeing every single one of them because you'd learn more, you'd enjoy it differently. And that should also be true of our responses to the coronavirus, I think.
Stephen, what about you? You guys are coming back with King Lear this season. I think you guys just announced that a week or so ago. And as you said, you're going to be deviating from your panoramic theater style. You're going to be stationary.
Yes.
This year,
that,
right?
that was a requirement by the city as well. We did get our permits, and they're at 50%, and we're dealing with that as well. And how do we regulate that? Some of our parks are really large, and some of our parks are not as large. And so the smaller ones, in fact, will have less than the permit number because they just can't fit. We're also doing a lot of front of house staff. Equity is requiring a bunch of extra people for us to hire.
Yeah.
And COVID, like basically COVID marshals, COVID infection
safety
specialists.
officers.
Thank you.
Yep,
They changed the
incredible.
name. It used to be something else. So infection
Oh.
control specialist or something like that, but they used to call it. So it's we're doing it one day at a time. Equity's got a 27-page list of rules. I mean, I'm sorry I was late to this, where my board is discussing, can you, it's illegal to ask someone to be vaccinated.
Really?
It's illegal. It's completely illegal. So it may not be a HIPAA violation, but it is illegal in labor law. So how do you encourage people? Because we want people to be vaccinated. How do we encourage our staffers? We're going to employ 33 people this summer, full-time, with pension and health. And how do we encourage that? And you don't know, some people you have to hire, you don't know. So, there's a lot of questions that are happening right now. But like one of the things is we're not moving. But the city was like, you may not move around from place to place. And I'm like, that's fine. So we've rethought the show a bit, and that's fine. I know exactly what we're going to do.
One thing you talked about earlier, but is Equity Actors, the fact that Equity hasn't even made a decision about off Broadway, that they just haven't even touched it, that it's off Broadway in your case. Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff to go through right now, and we had 4 major hurdles. We've completed 3, and the third one was getting the permits literally today from the city.
Wow.
We got sign off from the city today. And we're going to hear from Equity on Thursday.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Yeah,
that a COVID safety officer, there needs to be one for every 20 people.
Yeah, correct. That's correct.
And where does the salary come from?
We pay it.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
We pay it. Yeah, that's part of it. It's one of every 20 staffers. Doesn't include the audience.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
And as my understanding, it's only the cast and crew.
On average, how many people are you expecting per show in the audience, Stephen?
Oh God, I mean, the permits for 75. All of us know that 75 is not necessarily a real number. That's much smaller than our average, our average nightly. But on the other hand, we don't know what's going to happen. What I can tell you is this: we did 4 productions online last season. We still had 5,000 people come see our show. So, it was like, even the Lear alone was like, I think just north of 3,500 people. So, the thirst is out there. There are people who are interested, but everybody's going to have their own approach. We do have a very actually robust reservation system, I'm happy to share with my colleagues. It works really well. And about half our audience actually does reserve nightly. And it's great because it creates a really great mailing list and great for fundraising. And there's a way to do it. And we've kind of figured that out now. So we can somewhat limit it. We're going to limit the number of reservations. And for the folks who are new to us, they'll be like, oh, they're sold out. Sorry, can't go. And that's okay. We know they won't show up. But the people who are wandering, particularly in Central Park or the Battery, where they just wander in because they're walking their dog or, strolling along with whatever, or on a group date, 20 kids on a group date in high school, they want to show up, but we've got to do contact tracing. So we need to take contact information from everybody who shows up, who's going to want to stand, not just stand there for a minute, but like, oh, I really want to watch this. I want to sit down. So we need to, we're working on the plan of how to do that, to, get that information from them as well.
So
Because we feel there's an ethical obligation. We, God forbid there's an infection, and we need to be able to trace. And that's one of the questions actually Frank brought up, that's on the park. I think Frank brought up, that's on the park permit application, is you have to have a COVID tracing plan in effect.
Yeah.
So
for each of you, it seems like, there are so many aspects to producing Shakespeare, let alone outdoor Shakespeare in New York. But it seems like one of the through lines of this discussion is that a big part of presenting outdoor Shakespeare, it's not just assembling a great cast, it's not just rehearsing and making sure everyone's up to snuff. A lot of it is the mechanics of getting your park permits, working with equity to get get everything cleared, to have the actors that you want to have, be able
insurance.
Talk to me about some of the challenges of getting your park permits and getting just getting the square one so you can start casting and rehearsing.
Yeah, we received our May permit, but they're lagging on the others, and the explanation is they're doing them 1 month at a time, which seems very odd, but that's what we're told. So we have to sit tight until we do get June, July, or August. But I'm feeling pretty good about getting them, and certainly
you should be. We just got June, July, and August. So
you did. Okay,
yes,
good.
We just just came through for us. So
Got June.
You just got June. Now, Frank, you and Beth Ann, you're in the boroughs. Is it the same process for you, or do you have to go through a different commission to get your permits?
Depends on the park.
My God.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know who wants to go first. I actually avoid the park permit mostly because when we worked in Fort Wadsworth, that's federal land, and last year, especially under the last administration, as we know, there weren't many federal rules against COVID, and I took advantage of that last year. Very different this year, though, I have to say. But we did move locations this year, and actually, I'm in a private property where I'm doing this show.
So very different when you don't have to deal with public land.
Yeah.
Each space is different.
Right.
How about you, Beth Ann?
We go through the Brooklyn Parks Department, and when we first started out, it was definitely something that we handled. But when we started partnering with the Friends of Carroll Park, we started going through them, as they had worked with them for 30 years previous. So it was just kind of a nice handoff. So we are still waiting to hear back. And I mean, every park has its own set of problems, but we were also just kind of hoping that we could answer some things from equity and also work out the Parks Department. And without both of those things working, we're working on a different route, I guess, for us personally. Not to say that we couldn't try to do some of the brave things that the rest of you are doing with contact tracing, and trying to set up, like you said, a bottleneck effect. That's definitely something that that we could look into, but I have a hard time. I have a hard time not working with some union members. I would really like to do that as well. So when we have, our budget for what we're going to put all of it towards this summer, we're just holding off just a bit before we make that kind of commitment.
Now, a couple of months back, I don't remember exactly when it was, the Public Theater announced that they are resuming live performances, and they are going to have their summer season, but it's going to be limited to one production. I think they're doing the Merry Wives of Windsor, if I remember correctly. How much does what the Public Theater does impact the decision making for the rest of the outdoor Shakespeare companies like yourselves?
Not at all.
Are they the barometer by which you decide whether or not to?
No.
I was just, wait, I have to say something. I know everyone else on this call is going to say no. I'm going to say it does. It does affect
For
us.
you,
Okay.
yeah.
Because
Yours
we're
it does.
young and we're small and we're 15 yards away from them. And I do kind of say, like, honestly, it's a balance, right? Yes, if they're going to do a show, then maybe I'll consider doing a show, but they also have a lot more money and resources than we do. So there's that aspect of things too. But I personally, because we are a young, small company, we do look to them as what is acceptable if you have the resources, the funds, the time, the energy, the staff, all of those things. I don't expect us to be them, but I go, okay, that's where they're at. Where are we underneath that?
Emily, I'm just going to say we cut our teeth. I think there were 2 seasons in our first 5 years where we did the same show as the public. And that's when my audiences exploded. Because people were dying to see both versions of the same play within 20 blocks, 20 city blocks, right? Because we're like roughly about 20 city blocks north of the public. So that was awesome. And, I kind of like wish it would happen again. I'm actually thrilled. We're doing a 14-person layer. They're only doing 12 roles this summer. So we got more equity contracts than the public this summer. So, so don't be afraid. Just, if I was like freaked out, but then people in the audience started talking to me going, oh, you did this and they did this. And New Yorkers love that stuff.
Yeah,
I've always thought if we pick a show that the public picks, because we always announce our shows before they do, I always feel like, oh, good job. We have our finger on the pulse. We know what's going on. We know what people are talking about and want to see. I definitely think it's a good thing if we pick the same show as them. So yeah, I definitely look to the public.
Periodically, there's the thing that happens, which is it's like the year of Lears, where that was in 2008, 2013. Everyone was doing King Lear, and it was the same with Henry IV, Richard III. There was a year of Richard III, and I think it's great because it's just that people can go from park to park or different regions just to see these different shows. And I think that's what your Stephen said is absolutely right. It's kind of great. It's thrilling.
I'll even add, it's great press because the year we were doing Caesar, Donmar came to St. Anne's Warehouse, and It was just and we actually we had a woman playing Caesar, and they had a woman playing Caesar, and so we got great press that summer, and so it's not hurt us in the past. It's only kind of helped expand what we're doing.
And the reality is the people who saw Kevin Spacey doing that, and then our Richard III actually preferred ours, which was kind of flattering, but they gave all the reasons why they didn't like Kevin Spacey's and why they liked ours. So it does work to our benefit sometimes, where they actually go, wow, yeah, Kevin Spacey. Huh.
Yeah, I got lucky. I was the second year I did Macbeth at Fort Tryon Park was the year that Kelsey Grammer tried to do it on Broadway.
Oh goodness!
Yeah, it was more than one
good
review.
For you.
Yeah, it was great for us when the reviewers said, "Save your money and go up to Fort Tryon Park." That was great. That was you can't buy that.
I think that production on Broadway closed after what, 3 performances, something like that.
Hey, they had $3 million. I know because the theater that they were in, equity limits you to $3 million. We had 3,000.
All right. So we touched on the idea before about open air performances. And
can I just say,
go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say on Staten Island, I think we're so far away that some people might just think we're the public, So
you should be. They should be paying you.
Right. All right.
All right.
But one thing I've noticed that they will often do the same show we did like the year after us. There was a couple of years where they kept doing it the year after, so I always kept feeling like, okay, well at least we were a little bit ahead.
You're trendsetters.
But anyway, that's it.
Right.
Who's doing Time of Athens? Weren't you doing Time of Athens?
We're doing Time of Athens.
Yeah, no one ever does that, so I think you're doing great.
Yeah,
that's a tricky
one. Yeah, it's awesome. It
Yeah.
is. But we're doing it in our director Ariel Marcus. She's really talented. They're doing a very Greek style. So like all the little extra players are all very much like Greek chorus. So it's kind of really biting into the Greek aspect of it. It's really working.
Cool.
At least in the rehearsals that I've seen so far. So we're excited about it, and we love that no one really does that show. So
No one does.
maybe there'll be a revival.
And we have a question from the audience, and I think we've already touched on this, but we'll just hit it again in case anyone has anything further to say. Someone from the audience is asking if the actors in the performances are going to be masked, and if so, how will that affect their performances? Frank, you spoke about how your actors were masked and they had the almost the Venetian style or the Commedia dell'arte style masks. Did that impede their ability to get the words out there, to deliver their vocals all the way to the across the park?
Yeah, it certainly was a little more demanding, and they had to rely on it. Everything had to be big. The gestures had to be big. Everything had to be very clear. We also had to make it very clear who was speaking. Because you couldn't see the mouths move. So yeah, it definitely created a much more stylized production. And the actors, had to deal with all of those limitations, but they did it.
So this gets into something that we touched on earlier, and I was about to get into a moment ago, is that we are working in an environment where we're doing open air theater, and having been there and done that myself, I know that when you turn your head this way and you start delivering your lines this way, all the sound goes that way, and the people that are sitting right in front of you in that park, no matter how big or small it is, can't hear half of what you just said. So
Sorry,
ahead, Nicholas.
The delay. No, at the monument, it's really wonderful because our actors, certainly the ones who've worked with us the longest, know how to bounce their voices off the stone. So you can have your back to the audience and bounce your voice off of the stone wall, and the audience will hear you. It's really wild. It's an incredible space to work in so many ways.
Emily, how about you? How did your actors deal with projecting and articulating well enough for an audience, especially in the shadow of the public theater, to be able to hear everything that's going on? How do you get them? How do you train them to do that?
Sure. So we haven't done an outdoor show with masks, but I mean, obviously, sound is always a struggle when you're outside, and especially in New York City, and you're dealing with sirens and helicopters and anything else you can imagine that's going on in the park. I mean, honestly, we're close enough to the Delacortes that if they're starting a show as our show is ending, you can hear the music or the storm. We could hear the Tempest when they did the Tempest that year. Luckily, it fit into our show, so we were like, it works. But I think it's very similar, honestly, to what we did when we went virtual, which is you just own the space you're in. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with. There are helicopters. Cool. Deal with them. Fight them or acknowledge them or something. Don't just pretend they're not there. The audience can hear them too. Like, we're all in this space together. And so obviously it's a lot of training. It's a lot of rehearsal, even casting. When we're looking at resumes of who we're going to call in, we like people who have outdoor experience on their resumes. If you've done outdoor theater before or Shakespeare, we want to see at least kind of one of the other to call you in, because we feel like we can teach you one or the other thing, but we can't teach you both in the amount of time. Again, we were talking about the short amount of time we have. But then, of course, and I think everybody knows this, you bring in voice and speech coaches and we have movement directors and all of those things to help kind of own the space in new ways. But it is quite a challenge. One of the very first conversations we have each season with our actors is, this is hard. Summit Rock is hard. It's fun. It's exciting. It's going to be something unlike anything you've done before, but it's hard. And it's its own character, right? The elements are their own character in the show. And you have to really, don't fight that the way you wouldn't like just turn off another actor and ignore them. And you don't do that with the elements either. That's how we've done it.
How about you, Stephen? You work in some pretty large outdoor spaces, and you're on the run. How do the
Well,
actors?
I guess we have something called the helicopter queue. So we train everybody in this. It's called the helicopter queue, and when a helicopter is low enough that it's impeding whatever you can do, the actor who's speaking looks up, and then everybody else on stage looks up, and lo and behold, the audience laughs because we recognize it, and then we run it like a laugh line, and then they just pick up again where they were going. A couple seasons ago, we did Importance of Being Earnest 2 Ways, where every other night the entire cast changed role and gender, and it's happened to be a reverse night. And when Miss Prism is confessing her theft of the, losing the baby in the handbag and all that stuff, a siren went by, and she yelled, "Oh, the police!" And it was, huge laughs in the audience because Miss Prism thought she was going to jail, and she doesn't go to jail, but and so I mean, I always say to people, we make the park the environment of the show, number one. So they are in the space with us, and yet there's a lot of technique involved. There's a lot of our blocking technique in panoramic theater is about having the audience face as much flat front as possible, whoever's speaking, and everybody else can give a full back. But when you look at it all together, it seems completely seamless, and that's the thing we've codified. Our vocal technique. There are certain words that carry that you do not have. Certain sounds, certain ways you accent words, certain syllables you hit. You say cannot instead of cannot. Things like that help in projection. Then the actor, we're not asking the actor, you got to belt everything. We don't want that ever to happen, because how do you do that? But then you also can't drop your voice too low, because then you can't hear. You can't hear 10 feet away, forget about the audience sitting 30 or 40 feet away. So we have to figure out how to go about doing that. So, but we've codified all this right now. So it's a technique, and we're building on it. And there's different names or different moves. And a lot of the people who work with us for a long time, I can just say, okay, do this, and they're like, oh, okay, I got, do a shared circle. And then the actors just know exactly what to do. And we teach, about, I would say on an average, we have about 30% veterans per show. And I have them, every veteran adopts a new actor to help them through the technique. And then what's been most exciting to me, at least, is one of our, an actor who works with us frequently did a show up in a cap rep, and she had a problem because it was a very kind of flat front. That was a scene on the apron, and she didn't, and the director was like, I don't know what to do. And she goes, I know what to do. And she used panoramic theater blocking, and the director was like, that's great. That works out really well. Everybody heard and everybody saw, and it worked, works out really nicely. So yeah, embrace it. We're still in a park. Dogs still run across the stage.
All right.
Or raccoon, or you name it.
I want to hear your animal stories. Emily, you refer to something.
Wait a second.
What's going on, Christopher?
Listen, I just want to say that the parks are a little different than they were back in 1989. And Rudolph Giuliani has turned out to be a complete fucking crackhead and totally fucking insane. But believe it or not, back then, like when he became mayor, it was like night and day in the parks. And so, everything Stephen says is absolutely true. I can't endorse more heavily what everyone's saying. And I try to write about some of that in the book I wrote about this stuff, for Routledge. But because I'm pioneering, I will say that one of the greatest concerns is safety. And one of the most important things to codify for the actors, in addition to everything Stephen's saying, is safety. And something we learned early was something we called cut procedure. And it's codified in the book, so don't need to go into it in too great a detail. But the bottom line is that the actor's safety is more important than anything. God damn it, number one. But when the actor's safety is threatened, the actor can't act either. And so we created this thing called it's not unlike the helicopter queue, but we called it cut procedure. And what it was, and stop me if everybody already knows this. But so what we found that worked was that if an actor was more concerned for their safety than they were for acting, because yes, dogs and babies and balls, and that's all a lot of fun. But when a crackhead breaks a bottle and attacks your audience, that's another story. So we had this thing called cut procedure. Any actor was empowered to call cut at any time. They needed to say it loud, and they needed to step back and look at the threat. And then that was my cue, kind of like the rodeo clown. And this worked 90% of the time. Was I'd look at the person, usually they were drunk, sometimes they were on drugs, and I would look at them and I would say, we had auditions, where were you? And then the whole audience would laugh. And if you got 300 or 400 New Yorkers out there and they all laugh, then suddenly the drunk person like looks around and realizes they're not messing it up for that one actor. They're messing it up for 300 or 400 people and their kids and all that. They get embarrassed and they leave. But the key thing about cut procedure was that we never started acting again until I said action, because I needed that spotlight of everybody looking at me to sort of use that spotlight to put it on the person who is creating the threat, right? So that we could de-escalate and de-escalate and de-escalate until it was obvious everyone was happy, everything was fine. And then we would, like any other interruption, I'd say, do you guys know where to take it from? Great, okay. Then I would just say, thank you, everyone, do a take. The audience is always on your side for this kind of thing. And then the actors would get back to work. We did have one additional part of cut procedure that, thank God, we've never had to use, even with the production where our rehearsals, we missed a rehearsal because of 9/11, for God's sake, but not the night after. We rehearsed with flashlights in Central Park. But one thing we have is also, in addition to cut, is if an actor, if I have to cry rally, I say rally 3 times loud, it means that everybody needs to absolutely run, drop everything, forget everything, and run to the rally point that we've established, which is usually the nearby subway, so that we can count and make sure everybody's safe. Rally is reserved for, God forbid, if we see somebody with a gun, which thank God hasn't happened yet. We live in, like I say, the parks are very different. And I meant in a way that they were safer. But, back then we hadn't had all these shooting incidents either, where fucking kids in elementary schools are being gunned down with automatic weapons. So I would hate to see an automatic weapon show up and not have somebody know that they better run their ass off instead of trying to do their fucking lines, right?
Right.
Man, I laugh, but Jesus, I'm worried about this stuff.
That's a scary, absolutely. This is something that in the, we're coming out of the coronavirus pandemic, but there is no shortage of other threats out there. But let's flip to something a little bit lighter. Let's hear some of your funny anecdotes about doing Shakespeare in New York. Emily, you
I don't have any. All my goddamn anecdotes have to do with getting arrested and fucking police.
Rodney, if I could just speak, I know you want to get funny, but I do just want to say one thing that has helped our company, and I thank Stephen and Emily for their real. I mean, you perfected exactly the technique and how to take in the environment. So I won't add anything to that, but I will say one thing that has really helped us in our shows in bringing a sense of calm and peace, not only to the people surrounding the audience, but the audience itself, because some of these shows can be lengthy and people get restless, especially if there's children in the audience. And music has always been something that's been a part of every single one of our shows. And it's one that brings a sense of peace, a sense of calm, and a sense of attention to the work that I think has been really, really valuable to us. And one that, and we've always had live music, which I also think is something that draws people in a way that's really exciting and beautiful. And all of a sudden we're all swaying the same way, even if we all have very different thoughts about what we're watching. So that's just something I wanted to share.
Absolutely. And some of the best productions I've seen a lot of it has been as much about the incidental music as about the what's being performed on stage. Emily, you in our email exchanges before this presentation tonight, you teased an idea of something about a story of a dog chasing some other kind of creature across the stage during a performance. What happened over there?
Really bad. I don't know if this is lighter necessarily. Well, yes, I will tell that story just quickly. I just want to second what Beth Ann said, because absolutely, we've also always had live music, original music, and it makes all the difference. I totally agree. I totally agree.
Me too.
Yeah, so we were doing a production of Cymbeline, and my props mistress, who has been our props mistress since we started, it was a performance. She was in the audience with her dog, who is a dear friend of the dog is a friend of the company, right? Has been to all of our shows. And Gouda, the dog Gouda, was on her leash, but not really being held because we're sitting on blankets and the show's happening. It's during Imogen's monologue. She's dressed as Fidele. she's going through all the emotions, and there are these holes in Summit Rock, and there are rats that live in these holes, and we're very aware of that. And a rat comes out of one of the holes, and the dog just takes off after the rat. Now, I was the director for this show, and let me tell you, as soon as that dog took off, I went like this. So I'm not exactly 100% sure what happened because I didn't watch it. I heard it though. The dog caught the rat and shook it around a little bit. This is like center stage. This is happening. Now, luckily, Summit Rock has layers, and Imogen was up on the 3rd layer. So she was very high away from what was happening right in front of the audience. And so Gouda gets the rat in its mouth, shakes it around a little bit. Sam, the owner, runs out, grabs Gouda, like smacks the rat away. The rat runs back to the rock. She looks at the audience. She goes, "Sorry, folks," takes the dog and runs off stage. And Imogen's next line was just perfect. Like, she obviously stopped acting. Well, not acting. She stopped speaking while all of this was happening. She continued to be like, "What the heck?" during all of it. And then her next line kind of was just the perfect next line, and then she went right back into it, and everybody, the audience, clapped, and that was that. But it was horrifying and hilarious and outdoor theater, and you can't beat it.
You can prepare everything, but have to be ready for anything else to happen. Anyone else have any one more story before we wrap it up?
I just want to jump in with one story. So we were doing Macbeth, and we're in the England scene, and it's in the Battery, and we use there's a space called the East Coast Memorial. Well, Trump flies over in Air Force 2 just as Malcolm is railing against the tyrant. I cannot tell you, with one of those double helicopter things, and he literally flies over so loud, right? You can't stop. The audience was absolutely riveted, and the actor was like, "The tyrant," and he points right up at the helicopter. And I cannot imagine a more political moment of theater. 300 people, however many people were there that night, 250, 300 people there, were just absolutely, amazed. And it was such a New York moment because we all knew. Forget Macbeth. We had our own tyrants that night.
All right.
I didn't bug me when Obama flew over. It only bugged me when Trump flew over. Because Obama did fly over a couple of years before that.
We're just about out of time. Anyone else have anything you want to throw in before we get to our farewells and our plugs?
Been an honor.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you. All right. So we are just about at 10 o'clock. It's 9:59. So I want to, on behalf of New York Shakespeare, to thank our wonderful guests for joining us here tonight. To Christopher Carter Sanderson of Gorilla Rep, to Stephen Burdman of New York Classical, Nicholas Martin Smith of the Hudson Warehouse, to Frank Williams of Staten Island Shakespeare, Emily Gallagher of Barefoot Shakespeare, and Beth Ann Hopkins of the Smith Street Stage. I thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for giving us some insights into the world of outdoor Shakespeare in New York. Before we sign off, I'll ask you all just to plug your website, or just give the audience one parting way in which they can connect with you going forward into the future. Stephen?
King Lear this summer, starting and playing in June, July, and a little bit of August. New York, nyclassical.org. All right, fantastic. Christopher?
Well, gosh, we're sort of starting our own little Shakespeare channel. But what you can do right now is go to guerrillareptheater.org/Macbeth. And then you can go right to the Vimeo there and see our all close-up Macbeth that's, completely immersive in wherever you are.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Nicholas?
Look for us for doing Love's Labor's Lost in July, and then the Count of Monte Cristo in August. Yeah, it was great. Thanks very much for putting this together, Rodney. This was great.
Oh, I'm happy to do so. I've enjoyed it. It's been a blast for me. Nicholas, where can people connect to your company's website or your social media?
Facebook is a great way to get a Facebook group page, and our website is hudsonwarehouse.org. But okay. Facebook, that's
Facebook is your main place. Okay.
Yeah, Facebook group
Frank?
page.
Frank, how can people find you guys?
SI Shakespeare. What's that? Oh, okay. Yeah, SIShakespeare.org is our website. You can check us out there. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. Check out Timon of Athens, which is coming up in May. We have 5 slots in this season, but Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet are at the end of this year too. So those out too.
Fantastic. Emily?
We're barefootshakespeare.org or on Facebook and Instagram. Our Instagram is poppin'. Check us out at Barefoot Shakes.
All right. And Beth Ann?
We are smithstreetstage.org. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And actually, this past spring, we created a memory collage with about 17 or 18 of our artists who have come back, and they tell stories, and it's just these little beautiful clips interspersed with some of the work that we're seeing. So if you want to see some of what we have done over the past 10 years, combined with lovely animal stories and other more impactful moments on the stage, then you can check that out. And always sign up for the mailing list if you want to hear more.
Fantastic. All right. Well, to everyone who will join us tonight on Facebook Live, we thank you so much for lending your
Rodney.
time, for lending your ears to this fantastic
Rodney.
discussion about Outdoor Shakespeare in New York. Follow the companies that you saw represented here, support your local Shakespeare group, and keep in touch with us here at New York Shakespeare. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.